Welcome to the Erasmus Foundation podcast. My name is Paul Nugent. Are you looking for answers to life and its meaning? Then this may well be the very podcast you need to listen to. In a series of podcasts, we are going to look at the difficult questions of life and apply spiritual knowledge to find out the answers. Hello. Today we are going to look at a concept, responsibility. The word in spirit is rakamora. Today we have Mike, Hedley and Julia. And we're going to kick this one off with Mike. Responsibility, Mike. What you got to say about that?
When we are first born into this world, our parents have the responsibility to look after us. And as we grow and we learn, if we look at ourselves perhaps as a toddler, as a 3 or 4 year old, we don't really have the concept of responsibility, but we will gradually get an understanding of consequences. For instance, say if we run outside just after a rainstorm and we don't have our welly boots on, then we know we'll get soggy socks and wet feet. So we learn through that the consequences of what happens, cause and effect. But it's not until we gradually age and develop into young childhood, perhaps around the age of becoming a teenager, that we start to have an appreciation and understanding better of what responsibility is. Now this, I'm talking responsibility more so of the earth, more physical as opposed to spiritual. As we grow and we learn through various experiences with our friends and obviously with our parents of what responsibility is. And this will change gradually as we go throughout our lives, and the importance of responsibility of different aspects. So for me at this moment in time, I'm a father, we have a family. So that's where my main responsibility is at this moment in time. I look to provide a roof to shelter them, food to feed my family. So that's the important part for me at this moment in time. But as I say, as we go throughout our lives, responsibility changes.
Okay, so what you're saying then, Mike, throughout our life, our responsibility differs depending on the circumstances we find ourselves in. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, very much so.
Okay, so that's responsibility of the earth in a way. That's what most people think of as responsibility. But from a spiritual point of view, Julia, what would you say our responsibility is when we're here on earth?
Well, first of all, I was looking forward to saying that word, rahakamora. But it is a lovely word. I think the first thing I'd just like to say is that I feel that because of what we believe here in the Foundation, our responsibility, first of all, is to the Great Mind in a way, because the Great Mind has designed and created our tapestry for us.
Sorry, can I just stop? I thought while we were down on earth, our responsibility was to ourselves first, then to the Great Mind. And when we're at home, responsibility, we are firstly to the Great Mind, then to us. I thought it was the other way around.
Do you know, Hedley? I mean, obviously,
I'm not sure. Maybe Paul is right, but
yeah. Well, I don't have to talk about that.
Spirit at home have first and foremost a responsibility to the Great Mind.
Mm.
When spirit come to the earth, inhabits a humanoid form in a humanoid body as a person, they also still have a responsibility to the Great Mind, but they also have a responsibility to themselves, to others, and of course to their immediate family and friends, and people they are responsible for. But in being responsible for yourself, in a way, you are then being responsible to the great mind.
Thank you. Julia, so Mike was talking about responsibility of the earth, and Badina showed us the difference between being at home and the responsibilities of the great mind there, and also when we're on the earth, we have different responsibilities. So what would you like to say about responsibility, Julia?
Well, I agree with Mike. You know, when you're a child, you don't have much, very little responsibility, but I do feel maybe you have some to a certain extent because of how you might react to your parents or your siblings, little incidents that might occur that will perhaps tell you something about yourself as you grow up. But as you do get older, I do feel that you have more responsibility for your behavior. And as we learn here in the foundation, we have strengths and we have weaknesses. And very often we find out about ourselves from a young age, and as we get older into early adulthood, from experiences we have with others, with our peers, at school, within our family. A lot of these have an effect on us. And I think it teaches us about ourselves, which I think is a big responsibility. And it's very important spiritually, I think, in how we develop and grow, and in a way to help us find our purpose. So it is quite difficult at this time perhaps to always know what we feel we want to do with our lives. But I think through these experiences, we do learn, and I think we also learn to be more responsible as well as we go through life. Often through mistakes we make, we realize perhaps we should have said something differently or behaved in a different way. And I think if we are honest with ourselves, we take on that responsibility, perhaps by considering what we've done and what we've learnt, and then we move forward. So it's a learning process. And I think responsibility is something ongoing throughout our lives. And as Mike has said, it does change in our life because of different things we do. We might get married, we might have children, as Mike has explained. But I think also another thing that should be considered, which perhaps we appreciate as we get older, is being responsible for ourselves, but being careful not to interfere with other people and remind ourselves that they are responsible for what they do and say. And I think sometimes it's quite easy to maybe get involved when we shouldn't be, because we're all here to learn. And sometimes we just have to say to ourselves, look, that's their tapestry, it's their choice. Don't get involved. It's their responsibility.
Yes, that's taking on a different concept altogether. It's when we interfere with other people's lives, Hedley. So would you like to say any more about that?
Yes, I would like to say a little about the meaning of responsibility to spirit. And this word responsibility, rahakamora, it is very important to spirit. And when spirits are first cold, made by the great mind, they are very young, they go to the first plane at home in spirit, where they are taught many, many things. And one of the first things they are taught is the meaning of responsibility, what it means in spirit. And this is a topic of their education for much of their lives as they mature, evolve, grow much older, it still has much meaning, and it is understood more as one evolves in spirit. And one thing I wanted to say is that for a very ancient spirit, a very highly evolved spirit, they can reach an age where it is no longer necessary for them to come to the earth, to learn, to live an experience, to live a life, to learn from that, because they have done all things, seen all things, and been all things. And therefore, if it is on a rare occasion that such an ancient will come to the earth and live a life, they will be more free roving. They will not necessarily have a tapestry. The great mind would have given them a freedom, a self-roving, that they are mature and wise and knowledgeable enough to know that sense of responsibility that they are given and to use it wisely. And further to this, as another example, if a spirit, again, a very aged one, a very advanced, ancient, feels it necessary to look at themselves, or if they have considered that they have done something in error, then they will take themselves to a place at home which is called the wilderness. And they will sit in a form of meditation, a browsing, and they will do a self-inspection and look at themselves very deeply to see if they have done something wrong, or indeed if they have, why this did occur. And that is a demonstration of responsibility, of supplication of self, and having the responsibility full, intuitively, within your very being, to know that you are responsible for yourself, and it is your responsibility to correct anything that is necessary.
And going back to what you were saying about those spirits without a tapestry, that is quite rare, isn't it, on the earth?
Oh, yes, it is, yes.
Very, very few indeed. Okay, Mike. Now, one of the things I was thinking about while we were talking then was responsibility to the truth. Is that something you'd like to talk about?
That was the next thing that was on my mind, Paul. We talking of responsibility. I mean, that really is up there at the very top. For me, I think if we can speak and use truth at all times, that in itself is a reflection of oneself. That would show how responsible we are towards ourselves and to others. So to use truth when we're conducting ourselves with others is very important. And at the same time, when we use truth, sometimes someone may say truth can be upsetting for some. It can be painful, and that's a fair point, because it can be. But I think we should use and speak truth at all times. And in them instances where you realise that it could be quite upsetting for a recipient to hear the truth, is to put it across in a very gracious way. I think that's very important as well at all times. And that goes hand in hand with being responsible in how you conduct yourself with others.
Okay, Mike. That's lovely. And I think, Julia, I'd like to go one stage further than that, really, because I think being responsible for the truth is actually also looking at yourself in truth. Would you say that was?
Yes, very important. Yes, I think if we are to discover our purpose, and everyone has a purpose, then it is important to get to know ourselves. And I do feel that is a responsibility to get to know ourselves completely. I remember when we first used to come to meetings at the fellowship, there was mention often of getting to know ourselves physically and then spiritually, the two halves, if you like, bring them together to identify with the great mind. And at the time, I thought that was interesting and perhaps a little difficult. But over time, I've understood it more. And I think as you do get a better understanding of yourself, you do feel a more of a connection with your spirit, and you find more peace, which I feel is starting to connect more with the great mind. And all of this does revolve around truth, being truthful with yourself, which takes courage, takes strength. But that's really why we're here. We're here to learn, and we are going to be tested. But however we do, it is important to acknowledge truth, to accept truth, to have the courage to face it, and then learn from it, and then you can move forward. And in doing all that, you become a little stronger. Hopefully, you might have gained a little bit of knowledge and perhaps a little bit of wisdom. So all of this is very important and connected with the responsibility we have while we're on the earth.
Thank you, Julia. Now, looking at the world today, how responsible is mankind being at this time?
Exactly what I was going to speak on. The earth is out of balance. Your earth is sick at present. Why? How could this be? It has come into being because man is not in balance. Man is responsible for the state of his world at present. Through freedoms of choice, he has been given a certain freedom to act accordingly. And in doing so, he is surely learning the true meaning of responsibility. Because the outcome of man's responsibilities, or lack of them, has caused the earth to be out of balance as it is. And so far, if it was allowed to go any further, man will destroy his planet. And that, therefore, could be the greatest responsibility he could have. But Spirit and many people of the earth are doing all they can to prevent the earth being destroyed. Many within your world are familiar with the dangers, the sickness, and the imbalance, and what it can lead to. And it is for man to finally come to the realization of recognizing his responsibilities, so that he will then do something to put the world back into good health and sanity.
Was that Bettina talking, Hetty?
It was.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I thought
It
it was.
is.
It is. Okay. It's going to be an interesting editing process. This.
Well, does it really matter?
Not at all. Not at all. No, it's best to be clear, isn't it? That's the main thing. But I knew it was you.
Yes, and to provide, let us hope, sufficient and a responsible answer to what is needed.
Okay, I'm tempted to keep a lot of this in because it shows the process of how we work generally, don't we, in the foundation?
Yes, of course.
So I may do that. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good.
Right.
Very good.
Mike, have you got anything else to say after all this?
Nothing that comes to mind right now to follow that on. Paul.
No, that's the difficulty thing, isn't it? Okay. Julia, how about you?
Well, I think that in time, as events unfold, I think in time there'll be an understanding also of evil, which we've been told the understanding will be that, how evil was allowed to get so out of hand, really because of our weakness. So I think the responsibility to know ourselves, to bring ourselves into some sort of balance so that we're stronger, so that evil doesn't rise up again, which I don't believe it will, because I think the lessons will be so well learnt because of the events that are happening and that will happen in the near future. So I think that this time is very much to teach us all about evil, and so that in the future we can control it, so that it will not rise up again as it has done in this fifth civilization.
Now, I'll ask a general question here because it's interesting that we're talking about responsibility for good, for responsibility of the great mind. Now, in a way, does those who are behaving in an evil way, are they being responsible in any way to anybody or anything? Or is that a silly question?
May I? No.
Yeah. No. Okay, please.
You know very well, Spirit, do not consider any question to be in error. If it is in your mind to ask, then that is correct, and you should. It is not always dispensated for myself or others that speak to give all that you might wish to hear. That is another aspect. But consider. Evil exists, it always has done, to lesser or greater degree. At present, within your world, it is very much greater than it has ever been. And it will become less so. But it exists because it is here on the earth that the great mind has allowed this to be. And why so? It is because man has got to learn what evil is. He has got to see and understand what evil is responsible for. To learn further, to understand what evil will wish to be responsible for. And that in turn will teach man what his responsibilities are, in how he must manage evil and learn to control evil's designs to destroy and cause damage to your earth.
The Erasmus Foundation is a spiritual teaching and healing foundation based in Laxfield, Suffolk, in the United Kingdom. We have a webpage, www.erasmus-foundation.org. If you would like to be a guest on our podcast, or indeed have further questions for us, then please contact me on paul@erasmus-foundation.org, and we'll do our best to accommodate you. Thank you very much for listening.